Nikkei Asia News Roundup with Jada and Brian. Welcome to the Nikkei Asia News Roundup, where we bring you the latest updates and insights on the dynamic world of Asia and more. I'm your host, Brian, and for today's episode, we have a special guest.
Hi listeners, I'm Sayumi, Nikkei Asia's reporter covering climate change and automobiles. I'm delighted to join this week's news roundup.
And welcome back.
Thank you. Now, let's delve into the headlines. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.
Huawei Technologies is aiming for a comeback in Southeast Asia with a rare overseas launch event for its flagship smartphones, underscoring the embattled Chinese company's determination to restore its consumer electronics business to global prominence.
Australia's ruling Labour Party has passed a centerpiece of its industrial policy through Parliament. This paves the way for subsidies for critical minerals processors and hydrogen producers.
Myanmar's government is tightening restrictions on young men traveling abroad for work following a rush of migration to avoid military service. The clampdown is fueling concerns that the military government may look to expand the restrictions to women.
Graduates from Chinese universities are playing a key role in helping the U.S. sustain its dominance of artificial intelligence, even as the two nations jostle in the booming sector, according to a prominent American think tank.
Singapore on Tuesday announced its budget plan for the next fiscal year starting April, focused on bringing down living costs with generous handouts ahead of a critical election, while boosting investments in infrastructure such as green energy and aviation.
Japan's Justice Ministry is expanding the scope of the nationality entry in official family records from May, Nikkei has learned, with the option to include a region, opening the door to list Taiwan. Now, moving on to the next segment.
Big Mac exposes Japan's weak hourly wage purchasing power. Wages in Japan are low internationally, according to a Nikkei analysis using the price of a McDonald's Big Mac hamburger, which is often used as an international price index. The analysis found that workers in Japan can buy 2.18 Big Macs for 1 hour of work at a restaurant or retail shop, compared with 3.95 in Australia and 2.56 in Hong Kong. The number in Japan also means a decrease of 0.2 hamburgers from 5 years ago, as wages have risen slower than prices. The strict cross-border comparison of economic data is difficult due to the effects of foreign exchange rates and differences in work environments. One way of leveling this is to compare prices of the same item extensively available in various countries, such as a Big Mac. Nikkei used data from Indeed, an American worldwide employment website for job listings, which has collected data on hourly wages paid to store workers of 22 global restaurant and retail chains, including McDonald's, by country or region. Together with the data, Nikkei's analysis used local Big Mac prices released by The Economist. The price of a Big Mac, according to The Economist, was $3.20 in Japan as of July 2024, nearly 50% lower than in the US and the UK, making a general impression that the fast food item in Japan is relatively inexpensive. But that does not mean the retail price of the hamburger is necessarily a bargain for workers in Japan, said one economist at Indeed Japan.
Manila's condo crisis turns spotlight on oversupply. One IT professional in the Philippines recently told Nikkei Asia he has no intention of swapping the house he bought 6 years ago in Metro Manila's eastern outskirts for a condominium in the heart of the Philippine capital, even if he could afford it. I don't think it's worth it to buy a unit that's worth millions of pesos, he said. Then you'll be stuck in a very small space. Maybe if you're wealthy, then it's fine. This reluctance among the middle class, who comprise 2/3 of buyers across the country and so are a crucial segment for developers and a barometer of the broader economy, has left an important sector of Metro Manila's housing market in crisis. Unsold condo inventory is at a multi-year high, and demand is forecast to weaken so much that the number of units expected to come onto the market in key areas in 2027 is only 13% of this year's total and 7.5% of the recent peak in 2017, according to data from real estate consultancy Colliers Philippines. Meanwhile, it will take 98 months, or more than 8 years, to clear the backlog across Metro Manila, Colliers estimates. The equivalent figure for each of the 4 years to 2020 was about a year. The main drivers of this turbulence, according to analysts, have been the introduction and then banning of Philippine offshore gaming operators and the weakening purchasing power of the middle class since the COVID pandemic.
And now for news highlights. In each episode, we have a discussion about a recent article that has particularly captured our attention.
Today, we are going to talk about Indonesia making a $1 billion healthcare bet to keep rich patients at home. So, what is this $1 billion healthcare bet?
The bet specifically is a hospital that's under construction. Let me go into some of the details here. This is a very large medical facility that is still currently under construction in Bali, in the southern part of Bali, which is already well known for being a tourist destination.
Yes.
And that's part of the connection there is that Indonesia has, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it is a situation where a lot of Indonesians, our statistic here says 1 in 1,000 households. So that's, for a population of 270 million, that's a lot of people, go abroad for medical treatment. And according to the now former president, Joko Widodo, he said that that's about 1 million people going abroad. And it costs Indonesia over $11 billion a year in lost revenue. And so they're trying to build this hospital and other medical facilities around Indonesia as a way to keep people inside the country to spend their medical money in Indonesia.
And apparently this facility is going to be built in Indonesia's first special economic zone for premium healthcare and related services. So that's really saying something about the government's initiative to really try to keep wealthy patients inside and treat them inside their homes. I think the issue here is, can they really do this?
Yeah, because the major destinations, I think some of them on the list are Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Singapore and Malaysia, which are just next door to Indonesia is a big country, but it's those are two neighboring countries. And so it might be easier to, if there is a good medical facility, to keep Indonesians going to hospitals in Indonesia, if the hospitals are good hospitals.
Right.
And that's one of the issues brought up in this story.
Maybe if we can introduce some statistics here. So there's this one survey mentioned in the article. It says medical services sought abroad by Indonesians. 60% say medical checkup. So that's quite a basic, I think, healthcare need. And apparently these Indonesians can't or don't want to find them inside their home country.
Yeah, medical checkup sounds like a very basic thing that a decent hospital could perform. And it's just a matter of having it done.
Right. And the main considerations for seeking healthcare services abroad, the top one says comprehensive service. So I guess that means patients want hospitals that are able to treat them for almost anything.
And that was interesting. We had a story in here. There's a story inside the story of a woman who takes her mother, who has a heart condition, but she also has dementia. And she takes her to, I believe it's Singapore, for treatment every year, twice a year, spending upwards of $60,000 per year. And she said one of the reasons they go to Singapore is because hospitals in Indonesia will treat her heart treatment, but will completely ignore the dementia side of it. And she's frustrated. And in Singapore, they don't do that. They are comprehensive about it.
Right. So I would imagine that it would also be cheaper to go abroad and treat them at the same time, whereas going to two different hospitals or trying to find medical treatment inside Indonesia.
And that's another aspect of the story that was interesting. It gets complicated very fast. But one of the problems with this hospital under construction in Bali is that it was supposed to open 2 years ago. And it's not open yet. We have some pictures in our story of the construction site. The building's there. But that's one of the problems, is that the building doesn't have the medical facilities or the doctors yet.
Right. Yes, it does mention the shortage of doctors. Indonesia apparently has few doctors compared to its neighbors. This is from the Indonesia's Ministry of Health. It says the number of doctors per 1,000 residents as of 2023, Indonesia is 0.6, and Singapore has 2.4. So that's, and also Malaysia 2.29. So no wonder why people would go abroad. They probably can't find doctors even if they wanted to.
Yeah, that's far more than double. That's probably one of the biggest points. They mentioned import taxes also make it very expensive to import medical equipment, which I believe Indonesia does for most of its high-end medical equipment. But the issue of the doctors is that there are fewer doctors per person in Indonesia, and a lot of them are probably maybe seeking employment opportunities outside of Indonesia. So building these types of hospitals will help keep them in the country.
Right.
And that's another problem, is that the qualification system, they don't really go into details or make any hard conclusions, but there are complaints that it's a complicated process in terms of language barriers and certifications. And there's talk of maybe we can find a way to streamline that a little bit.
I guess, yeah, but maybe if I can just return to this Bali International Hospital, it seems it has hotel-like aesthetics and 250 executive rooms and all this cutting-edge technology for advanced treatments. So I guess if this really materializes, it might be a good change for the Indonesia's medical industry. It could be like a catalyst maybe for better medical treatment for people there.
And also maybe bring in people from outside Indonesia. That could be also a major development.
And that brings us to the close of today's episode.
We look forward to having you join us again for the next edition of the Nikkei Asia News Roundup.
Until next time, I'm Sayumi, standing in for Jada.
I'm Brian. See you again and take care.
This program is brought to you by Nikkei.